Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, the show that's being written and shot while watching the great push at the same time. So I'm a little bit distracted, all right? I'm actually a little bit more entertained with this than I am with the MDI. I hope that others feel the same, and if so, I want to see some bigger competitions and for Blizzard to really put its money where its mouth is to get more and more people interested. So anyway, let's get right to the news that there's going to be no Blizzcon this coming November. Definitely not surprising, and the reasons super obvious. In a statement they said, "We've also talked about different paths we could take and how each one could be complicated by fluctuations in local and national health guidelines in the months ahead. Ultimately, after considering our options, we've come to the very difficult decision to not have BlizzCon this year." But should we take ActiBliz at their word? No, and here's the real reason. Bobby Kotick himself kicked down the doors at Blizzard and cancelled BlizzCon and Christmas and Pride Month, and is forcing them to add the tyrannical affix to world quests, pet battles, and even store mounts. Now, let's take a look at the state of California, where BlizzCon takes place, and its most current pandemic restrictions.
Boring.
Shut up. According to its site, which has policies to be enabled on June 15th, conventions like BlizzCon are classified as indoor mega events. Blizzard more than meets this requirement, considering that in 2018 there were 40,000 attendees at BlizzCon. For a mega event like BlizzCon to take place, verification of a vaccination or negative COVID test within 72 hours is required before entry. People traveling from outside California should quarantine for 7 days, and there's a bunch of other required or recommended stuff, but those are the big ones. These mandates will be in place until October 1st, 2021, approximately 1 month before BlizzCon usually takes place, after which these policies will be updated, lifted, or enhanced if needed. If you've ever been to a BlizzCon, you've got to understand that it is crowded as all heck, with massive crowds at every turn, shoulder-to-shoulder seating, and people shouting "for the Horde" in people's faces. And I miss that, I really do, along with seeing my guildmates having chicken and waffles that I haven't had in like 50 years it feels like. And as insane as this sounds, this year was supposed to be when WoW announces its next expansion, letting a lot of credence to the possibility that Shadowlands will end with 9.2 or could make 9.3 the start of a brand new story that leads us to the next expansion. The point is, it feels so good to be surrounded by the thousands of fans as we watch the new cinematic, the roars and the jeers and the etceteras, and I'm depressing myself. Deep breath, Soul, deep breath. I really wanted to go to BlizzCon this year, but I know that if they did announce it this year, my conscience just would not let me go. Imagine the horror if Blizzard tried to push forward with a BlizzCon only for the state of California to enact some new policy just a month ahead that totally screws everyone over. With a ton of money lost in cancellation fees, awkwardness with taking back time off requests, and so on and so forth. But would California get the blame? No, the fans would blame Blizzard for being greedy. What we can expect is a sort of BlizzCon line early next year, including both virtual and in-person engagements, which I expect will be something more like media and press being invited over. Doesn't sound all that exciting, but let's run with this a bit. Shadowlands was delayed. Patch 9.1 is like super delayed, so in a way this lines up with a possible WoW expansion announcement to happen during BlizzCon Line 2022. It's a great opportunity to get into the faces of developers and scream "for the Horde" and to ask lots of questions about WoW's 9th expansion. Imagine a gathering of just developers and press. It'd be quite the grilling that I'd be interested in watching. Or wait, actually maybe I can be a part of it. Right. Then just the other day, Blizzard released a promo video to hype up the release of Burning Crusade Classic, which starts next freaking week. I am stoked for a number of reasons, even if I myself won't be playing. I mean, it's no big deal, I played BC before, and even if I never got to play the full experience of 25-man raiding, I consider that time in my life to be irreplaceable, and like that's it. I'm happy because we've come a long way from the whole
You think you do, but you don't.
You know, that thing. And now people will get the opportunity to play a version of WoW that outside of private servers was considered lost. Yes, there are changes, a bit of quality of life here and there, there's some boosted characters that you're not going to notice, or you're going to be like ganking them as they barrel on by, and there are deluxe edition mounts that'll very quickly be replaced by griffins and falcons and hippogriffs and nether drakes, but probably most of all, after Tuesday there are going to be a lot of people who will finally shut up and just play video games. Yup. I said it. If you've been looking up from gaming every now and then, you might have noticed that among vocal players and critics, there's a lot of tension in the air. Restlessness, impatience, frustration, and rightfully so. The best cure for that? Content. To be frank, it's a pacifier for us to suck on. It's things to do to settle us down, relieve the boredom, and increase our time played. Next week, Blizzard is going to call the bluffs of many who have railed against Burning Crusade Classic and its deluxe editions and its longer than expected maintenance period, and put everything it's got into as smooth of a launch as they're able. With that, not all is going to be forgiven, but more than likely it's going to be pushed aside and forgotten. With any luck, 4 to 5 weeks from now, Shadowlands players will be enjoying patch 9.1, diving into new grinds and mounts and story content, throwing Sylvanas' corpse into a ditch, or elevating her into godhood, closing the chapter on today's discourse while opening up the next, and that's okay. I have to admit, even the discourse is feeling stale and uninspired. I'd throw in a time-gating joke if I could. Moving on, late last week, an article from IGN began making its rounds across the internets. It's on Blizzard, of course, and its tumultuous journey over the past 3 or so years as it endured layoffs and high-level departures along with bad press for a variety of reasons. I have to admit it's a bit weird for me to cover it because I don't want to give you simplified highlights or bullet points that might be misconstrued. I mean, don't even look at wowheads or other summaries. It's just a very well-written article that doesn't go on the attack, nor does it mindlessly shill. It just tells the story of a studio beloved for its genre-defining games in the past and the struggles that it faces today. The link is below, and I strongly encourage that you read the whole thing. The reason I'm mentioning this at all is because of the behavior among the studios and publishers ran largely by former Blizzard staff. As you know, Mike Morhaime, the former president of Blizzard, founded Dreamhaven, a holding company not unlike Activision Blizzard, and created 2 studios, Moonshot Games and Secret Door. The other week, Dreamhaven announced partnerships with 3 other studios, One More Game, Raidbase, and Lightforge Games, which just hit the scene earlier this month. This week, Dreamhaven announced a kind of advisory partnership with Frost Giant Studios, another studio that's poised to make a new entry into the RTS genre. And looking at this growing web, we can start to speculate a narrative of what Dreamhaven's master plans are, which may be to be the next big multi-studio publisher right alongside huge names that many of us grew up with. And I think this is pretty exciting. It's one thing for people to leave Blizzard or any company to get better pay and benefits and upward mobility. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yet it's another thing to see industry veterans leave to spread their own wings with all the risks that come from being a gaming startup where your first project might be your last. The reality though is that things don't always work out. Out of the dozen or so studios founded by former Blizzard staff, we did get the likes of Guild Wars and Torchlight, cool, but we also got the likes of WildStar and Firefall, boo. In the past, Sony flexed its muscle as both a publisher and console platform in order to support small studios or indie games. It was met with a positive response from fans and would-be developers, but like any investment, mixed results in the games that were released. Dreamhaven seems to be trying to put itself in this very position, so far being self-funded, but it remains to be seen if they're going to need a dose of venture capital or to go public, or will Mike Morhaime repeat history and allow Dreamhaven to be acquired by the likes of Davidson and Associates, or Vivendi, or Activision. Regardless, it's going to be years until we see anything coming from these studios, but one thing is certain, competition is always good, and I definitely wouldn't mind seeing other games to check out. Now let's turn our attention to this week's PTR build. It was a light but not so light build because, well, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but in this build we learn more about the Sylvanas encounter at the end of the Sanctum of Domination raid. Commenters have been initially impressed by the encounters, not just Sylvanas's, suggesting that this much effort means the final encounter with the jailer may not be as satisfying. My opinion, obviously it's not going to be as satisfying. We just met the guy. I would be like more excited to take down the Thanos as a raid boss, and my guess is that the jailer's got him in his pocket to be saved for like 9.2 or 3 or whatever. But there were some awesome quality of life changes added to the 9.1 experience that I covered earlier this week. Basically, as soon as you unlock Korthia, which will happen pretty much day 1 of the patch, your ult will be able to use an additional skip to bypass that leg of the campaign and jump straight into the action as well. At this point, not having a Maw skip at the beginning of the Shadowlands experience seems comical, or maybe there's some crazy technical reason why this hasn't been put in already. But the skips we'll be able to enjoy after the patch easily outstrips the Anima and Soul Ash rewards we get if we did repeat playthroughs. Best part is that it's optional, so do whatever you want. Crafting higher level legendaries also really came together in this build. In short, everyone's gonna make money. And legendary crafters who put time into developing the rank 4 recipes are going to make even more money. I'm gonna have links to those videos in the description below in case you missed them. Unfortunately, all is not well over in Mythic Plus world, especially in what has become one of Wowhead's most commented articles ever, and the fans are not singing their praises. The article covers the Mythic Plus score requirements in order to get the coveted Keystone Master achievement in the Season 2. Real quick, right now in Season 1, all we have to do is time 15s in every dungeon and ta-da, KSM achievement. Apparently, according to YouTube and Wowhead comments, literally everyone has KSM. It's super easy and almost impossible to get, and anyone who does not have KSM isn't really playing the game, and they definitely don't have the clout to even give an opinion on it. Well, welcome to Breezy Town, folks. Anyway, in patch 9.1, that requirement is being thrown out the window thanks to a new Mythic Plus score that's coming. Timing a key will get you score, and the higher the key, the more score that you get. Simple as that. And the new Keystone Master achievement is to achieve a total score of 2,000 points. Here's what's got people flipping out. According to the Wowhead article, in order to get Keystone Master, you are required to clear 15s of all 8 dungeons on both Tyrannical and Fortified, and here's why. Quoting from the article, score is accumulated for your highest key on both Tyrannical and Fortified. Your higher key of the two will award 100% of the score, but the lower key of the two will only contribute 33% score for the run. Completing a Necrotic Wake 15 on, say, Fortified will get you an estimated 187 score for that dungeon, but if you also clear a Necrotic Wake 15 on Tyrannical, that score now jumps up to something close to 250. 250 times 8 is 2,000, aka Keystone Master, and here is where this so-called requirement comes from. This is one of those situations where the math is sound, it makes sense, but the conclusions are wildly misleading and damaging to the understanding of how the new Keystone Master will work in practice, as opposed to on paper. Because if Blizzard really want what these critics are saying to make it required to complete 15s on both Tyrannical and Fortified, why bother with the score at all? Just change the achievement to require 15s on Tyrannical and Fortified and be done with it. It totally fits the other cynical narrative of being lazy and forcing players to do double the content for, more time played. I admit that Tyrannical and Fortified are not the most interesting of rotating the fixes. I've considered getting rid of them a number of times here on the channel, but my opinion, that's kind of the point. They're boring, I guess, but they're also easy to understand. They change up strategy and overall player behavior. Without them, Mythic Plus would feel a bit more like Horrific Visions, just with more maps, which, I would like, but you might not feel the same. To be fair though, we've dealt with Tyrannical and Fortified since Mythic Plus even started. Retiring them would be nice, but for better or worse, these affixes do add complexity to how the other affixes work. Given our nature to walk the path of least resistance, without Tyrannical and Fortified, maybe Mythic Plus wouldn't be as dumbed down as I claim, but the goalpost would just shift towards the next least favorite affix until criticism polished the fun and challenge out of this feature. Or maybe it's Blizzard finally listening. It sounds like hyperbole, but collectively we have never been at a state of yes, that feature is totally fine, just leave it there, all good, no change, at least while said feature was current. The headline and the article's claims of it being required to clear 15s on both affix types contaminated the rest of the relevant information, which rightfully points out that you don't necessarily have to complete 15s on every dungeon and affix type. So which is it, Wowhead team? Is it required or not? For example, you can maybe jump into a Plaguefall that's a 16 Fortified and a 14 Tyrannical and it'd be the same thing, because according to the article's math, the score that you get from a 16 is worth more than the score that you lose for only doing a 14. There's probably a bit more to it, but that's the real takeaway from this whole Mythic Plus score and the new KSM requirement. It's Blizzard letting the game acknowledge the obvious, that Tyrannical and Fortified are not made equal. Emphasizing a flexible method of earning score over the rigid requirements of the past alters player perceptions and goals. Yeah, you can tell yourself you must clear 15s of every dungeon twice, that's totally okay. Or you can play it naturally, just work through keys and start earning score to first hit those initial milestones. Keystone Explorer and Keystone Conqueror. Hey, you remember those? No? Thought so. Explorer needs a score of 750. Conqueror needs a score of 1500, and nailing these should be fairly quick and less time consuming than the current achievements that do require to clear all the dungeons. You'll be able to use that Valor sooner to upgrade gear. Yeah, you probably forgot about that too, because Valor in 905 didn't matter so much, but now it gets its time in the sun. I won't be able to emphasize this enough. Score is all that matters. It's like you're being told to fill a giant container with water. You have cups and buckets and siphons, you have easy ways and hard ways to get this task done, so what's the best way to do it? The answer is, who gives a shit? As long as you fill that container, it doesn't matter how you do it. Right now, your run-of-the-mill Keystone person who only cares about that achievement can't count past 15, and frankly, they don't have to. Raid.io at least acknowledges higher keys with its score. Shadowlands today does not, but Shadowlands 9.1 will. Every time you push your key, your score gets closer to that 2k. It really is as simple as that. Right now, if you're missing that 15 sanguine depths, every other key that you run is almost literally useless. You're screwed until you get that key either from your vault or from someone else. I know I'm saying the same thing like a dozen different ways, but I really want to make sure you folks that are sitting there get what it is that the Mythic Plus score is trying to do. And you know, when it comes to using this as a metric to screen people, I hate having a score on my head, and now there's no way around it. But now that it's coming, it's time to stop bitching about it and time to just start working with it. Anyway, I predict that your average Keystone Master is not going to have 15s across the board, but more like this jagged hill of 13s here, 17s there, a 14 2 chest somewhere else. It's not going to surprise me in the slightest if top players were to just troll the system and blacklist Tyrannical on certain dungeons, or even an entire dungeon just for the bragging rights. And as for Blizzard's data, I'm sure they already see that timed keys on Fortified trend higher than Tyrannical. I'd argue that the move to score makes it easier to earn Keystone Master by giving keys above and below 15s an actual value. Some of you may be wondering too, why not just change KSM to require 17s on Fortified and 13s on Tyrannical or something like that? That's because then you're fulfilling your own doomed prophecy of having to do double the work in order to fulfill these rigid requirements. Which brings me to what I think Blizzard should take a look at: how the higher and lower scores are calculated. Maybe in theory, one could time 18s in every dungeon on the Fortified affix, but only time 11s on Tyrannical, and that would meet the KSM requirements. Maybe a wider gulf could be better, but I think we're at a point where maybe you more experienced dungeon folk should chime in. And that's the show. Mostly. I want to send my condolences to John Akhtar's family. John was the developer of a number of well-known add-ons, including Add-on Control Panel, WoW Instant Messenger, aka Wim, and Pratt, all three of which I've used and I've featured in videos, and I didn't even know that he made all three of those. It's uncertain how well these add-ons will be updated in the future, but if you're interested in trying them out, I'm going to have links to them below. Next week is going to be big and disruptive as the Burning Crusade Classic goes live worldwide. It's not going to surprise me one bit if it's all hands on deck at Blizzard with its focus on its release, and a 9.1 PTR build is either pushed to a later day or even to the following week. It could be a reason why this week there were 5 Sanctum of Domination raid tests, including an entire LFR wing. We're getting closer and closer to finding out just what and how the Mythic Plus affix works, but it's too soon to draw conclusions. According to Wowhead data mining, it looks as if players will be able to turn Mythic Plus affixes against our enemies. Right now we're seeing evidence of a necrotic and volcanic-like power that could be applied to enemies, which would be insane. Imagine a volcanic on a bunch of mobs knocking them all up, or sanguine that players can stand in, although I guess that means someone has to die. Imagine being a demon hunter tank with a dead party but 4 stacks of bolstering. Okay, that sounds like some crazy fun, I can't lie. A big thanks to the people who keep this channel going, the awesome subscribers over on the Twitches, the amazing patrons, and to all of you who keep watching even during the long wait. But anyway, let's get out of here for now. There's a lot to look forward to next week with a launch, more PTR coverage, and maybe some Final Fantasy peppered on the side. I was actually having a lot more fun testing this week, but don't worry, I'll get out of that funk and get back to that walking and talking soon enough. Have a great weekend, folks, and we'll see you next week. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.